Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Magic Breakfast, Magic Morning. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Lindsey MacDonald, and I have the joy and privilege of being the Chief Executive at Magic Breakfast. A couple of housekeeping things before we start this morning's session. For many of you, I know you've joined before, so it will be old hat, but for those joining us for the first time, you're able to enable live captions. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a show captions, and you can enable those for yourself if that supports your kind of ability to hear and listen, understand all of the brilliant content that our wonderful speakers will be sharing with us. You can see the speakers that are joining us from a variety of organizations and schools across the country up on the screen right now. As always, the session will be recorded and it will be uploaded to YouTube shortly after the event finishes. So please watch out for that and feel free to share it with any colleagues or individuals who you think will be interested in what we have spoken about today. And most importantly, for the end of the session, what really brings value, I know, for lots of attendees and for the speakers and Magic Breakfast are the questions that you all submit. So again, if you look at the bottom of your screen on Zoom, you have the Q&A function and you're able to submit questions there. So please do that as we go through the session so you don't forget any of them, and we'll bring them all together at the end of the talk this morning. For those of you who have read through our annual report from 2023-24, you'll know that one of the things we are absolutely committed to doing at Magic Breakfast is shining a light on the children and young people who are arriving at school too hungry to learn and aren't yet being considered by government and emerging policy. And so today's session is about the youngest children and young people that we support at Magic Breakfast, thanks to supporters like those who are on the call today and many others across the country and our wonderful partner schools who have nurseries on their sites, and giving us, I guess, a starting point, the wider context of breakfast in the early years is Magic Breakfast's very own Jacquie Vasquez, our Director of Policy and Engagement. So I'll invite Jacquie onto the screen now to give us a talk through, I suppose, the setting and the big picture context that we're discussing today. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm just waiting for my slides to load. That was nice and quick. Thank you. So let's go on to the next slide. Lovely. The first thing that I wanted to talk through with you was the different types of early years provision, because it's split into different areas and it's a little bit more complex than the environment for post 5 years old education. So in England, broadly speaking, it's split into these three areas. You've got private providers. These can be a group organisation setting, such as day nurseries, or it can be home-based setting, childminders. These are run as commercial for-profit businesses. They're still required to follow national standards and regulations. And then you have the statutory or maintained sector, which is where Magic Breakfast focuses, and where I'll focus the information and the rest of my slides today. These are run by the government, they're funded by taxes, they're state-funded nursery schools or nurseries within primary and all through schools, known as school-based nurseries. So if we go on to the next slide, please. Few stats about these school-based nurseries. So just as an overview, and these figures are from a report in 2023, school-based nurseries make up around 20% of registered early education places, and school-based providers make up a greater share of places in the most deprived areas and have a greater proportion of children with special educational needs and disabilities compared with private group-based providers. At Magic Breakfast, we support around 150 nurseries, and this has really evolved quite organically from seeing the need within our schools, schools who have asked us for additional food for the nursery provision, where our engagement partners have gone to schools and seen the additional need from the early years areas in the school. Next slide, please. To give you a bit of a sense, the child's experiences in their earliest years is absolutely critical to future life chances. So this includes their experience of education and childcare, and it will influence their future health, education, and other key outcomes through their primary school, secondary, and into adulthood. Early years are particularly crucial for children's social and emotional development, with 90% of brain development occurring within the first 5 years, according to the Centre on the Developing Child at Harvard University. These early years set the foundations of learning, health, and behaviour throughout life. The Education Policy Institute found that disadvantaged children aged 5 were on average 4.6 months behind their peers on key educational attainment goals. That's shocking in itself, but it's actually a gap which has consistently widened since 2018. They also found that 40% of the disadvantaged gap at age 16 had already emerged by the age of 5. So you could already see where the disadvantage gap was going to continue and not be caught up through life. Those living in the most deprived communities were also experiencing a significant impact on health in early years. So if you think that on average, more healthy foods are twice as expensive per calorie as less healthy foods, you can see why this creates a barrier for low-income families to eat healthily. The impact of that is that children in the most deprived fifth of the population are over twice as likely to be living with obesity as those in the richest fifth by their first year of school. In addition, almost quarter, 24% of 5-year-olds have dental decay, with 2.5 times as many children in the most deprived fifth of the population affected compared with the richest fifth. Next slide, please. So what has the government sought to do in this area? Well, this is part of the government's opportunity mission to give every child the best start in life. Bridget Phillipson has pledged to deliver a sea change in the early years and called it her #1 priority. And whilst we celebrated their commitment to universal free breakfast provision for primary-age students, which sees a pilot test and learn scheme rolling out from April, so that's very much not yet done, there's still no such commitment for early years. And we know just how critical those early years are. As a result, and following the full rollout of primary provision over the next few years, we're facing a situation where younger siblings in the same school setting will not be able to access the breakfast or childcare that their elder siblings will enjoy. And this also clearly doesn't support a working mother who will be able to get childcare for older children, but not the youngest. We also see the rising need in this area. So the government has committed to deliver 3,000 additional school-based nurseries, resulting in 100,000 additional places. The first tranche of funding for this was opened in October last year in order to create 300 new nurseries to be operational by September this year. So we're conscious of the significant potential growth in the school-based nursery sector in the coming years. Next slide, please. When looking at the research that's available in early years on breakfast, it's not really there. So it's a vastly under-researched area. We found a couple of brief studies specifically about breakfast in preschool children, and they showed both a positive relationship between preschool children eating breakfast and improved cognitive performance. Both of these were international studies, neither were based in the UK. Breakfast provision at school-based nurseries tends to be a replication of what's happening in the primary school. However, the needs of a 2-year-old differ radically to that of a 5-year-old. Given this lack of existing research, we're setting out to fully understand the needs and practicalities of breakfast at nursery. So this is going to be critical given the potential growth in the school-based nursery sector. So we're looking at increased numbers of children needing this offer and this opportunity. We'll be looking at the impact of breakfast provision in nurseries and preschool, thinking about it in terms of things like closing the disadvantage gap, which I went through in terms of statistics, and also to support children's sense of connection, belonging, their readiness for school, their opportunity to experience things in school, which they don't have the opportunity to experience outside of school. The types of things we might be looking at are the things that we already know for primary school, and to a degree for secondary, things like the barriers and solutions for this age group and how that provision needs to differ from other age groups, the staff ratios as well, the nutritional content and how that food is prepared for the children. So there's a vast array of opportunity, I think, to make nursery breakfast provision the best possible and therefore have the best impact possible. That's all for me for now. So I'm going to pass back to Lindsey for the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Jacquie. And I noticed that some people have been joining us in the meantime. So just to flag that the session is being recorded and you are very much encouraged to add questions as we go through the session today into the Q&A. As our next speaker is joining us from First Steps Nutrition Trust. It's Dr. Katie Pereira-Kotze, and she's going to be speaking to us about nutrition and the wider considerations for policy and direct support in this space. Thank you so much, Katie.
Thanks very much, Lindsey, and thanks Magic Breakfast for having us. So as Lindsey mentioned, I'm going to speak a bit about specific nutritional needs for nursery-aged children and why they might be a little bit different or unique compared to older children. Next slide, please. So just as an overview, I'll summarize the particular nutritional needs and talk a bit about how a nutritional breakfast can impact cognitive, emotional, and physical development, and then also a bit about the kind of policy we would like to see around breakfast for nurseries in schools, and that this should be based on local and appropriate and applicable research, as Jacquie mentioned, and that it's important that government policy incorporates early years settings to align with their priorities and commitments for the healthiest generation ever. Next slide, please. So nursery-aged children, and we're talking about children under the age of 5, and children's in nurseries age ranges can be from birth to 6 months, which where there's specific needs, from 6 months where we look at the introduction of solids, but generally we're looking at children around the age of 3 or 4 years of and under 5 in nursery settings. And throughout this range of ages, children have different food preferences, and it's also a fundamental time for when eating habits are formed that extend to later life. And as Jacquie spoke about as well, nutritional intake and food that's being consumed during this time has consequences for growth and development, both in childhood, but also for health and development outcomes later in life, including brain development, which obviously has an impact on learning and educational outcomes as well. So the food that is offered in early year settings should provide appropriate energy and nutrients, but also encourage development of healthy eating habits. And our aims would be to reduce and prevent childhood obesity, but also to ensure that every child has the best start in life. And for this, it's important that regular meals are offered, especially because during different development stages, children's appetite can vary. It can increase and decrease depending on growth spurts and other developmental implications. But generally, nursery-aged children from the age of 1 to 5 need about 3 main meals and 3 snacks to provide the energy and nutrients needed throughout the day. And generally, breakfast should provide around 20% of the total energy and nutrient needs for the day. And then other meals kind of staggered, and it's quite kind of evenly spread throughout the day. Next slide, please. So there is some guidance available on how to provide the nutrients and energy needed during this time. And the Department for Education has some resources that were published in 2024. So these are quite recent. There's a set of resources called Help for Early Years Providers, which gives general advice on food provision in early years settings, including the 4 food groups. And just a reminder that these servings that are recommended are child-sized portions, and there is guidance on portion sizes for children under 5, because we can't expect young children to be eating the same portion sizes as older children or adults. And the 4 groups are the bread, rice, pastas, potatoes, starchy foods that should be around 4 servings a day, fruit and vegetables around 5 servings a day, the meat, fish, eggs, non-dairy source of protein around 2 servings a day, and milk and dairy foods around 3 servings a day. So these resources have practical support like the healthy plate. There's also tips for planning menus for early year settings, guidance on food labels, what they mean and how to use them, and as I mentioned, guidance on portion sizes. Next slide, please. So some general principles around eating well in nursery-aged children are that meals and snacks should be based on unprocessed and minimally processed foods. A good variety of different foods is important to encourage, a variety of tastes, textures, cultural preferences around food. Small quantities of good quality and nutrient-dense food need to be available regularly to children at this age. And during this age and development stage, there's certain nutrients to be aware of. So foods with iron and zinc should be included at every meal, and foods with calcium, riboflavin, and iodine are needed every day. Fruit and vegetables, particularly important, so children needing 5 portions of child-sized portions a day. And we highlight this because we know it can be that this is not routinely happening. Fresh drinking water should be available at all times, and good hygiene and safe food consumption needs to be encouraged. We should limit foods that are high in salt, sugar, and saturated fat, and try to avoid commercial snack foods and ultra-processed toddler snacks. Next slide, please. So a nutritional breakfast, particularly, as I mentioned earlier, can provide up to 20% or a fifth of a nursery-aged child's energy and nutrient needs for the day. And eating breakfast for all children is important for their learning, to be able to pay attention and have a good mood and positive social interactions when they're in early years settings. And when children feel hungry, it can negatively influence both their cognitive ability and their emotional kind of needs and social interaction. And breakfast is a really good opportunity to provide high quality, nutritious food, including all of the 4 food groups. Next slide, please. So what we'd like to see regarding policy around breakfast for nurseries in schools, and again, building on from what Jacquie described, that policies should be evidence-based, based on local and relevant evidence and research. So quality breakfast should be nutritious, healthy, good quality food with a variety of nutrients from the different food groups. It's important to monitor and track what's working and what isn't working. It's important that adequate funding and access is provided, and that if we're saying free meals, this should mean actually free meals. We can look at best practices and what learns from other settings and other examples of, positive and constructive programs that have been implemented. We should have a continuous cycle of school breakfast improvement, and it also sometimes the focus is around getting children to the nursery or school so that parents can get to work earlier, but breakfast programs should also be about the children, their nutritional needs, their development needs as well, and that breakfast can be made to be a time for learning and not just eating. Next slide, please. There are some resources available. Each of the 4 governments have guidance on eating well in children from the age of 1 to under 5. And I've highlighted the Scottish Government resource Setting the Table. It's one of the more recent ones, and I included some images from that resource. It's quite comprehensive. And then First Steps Nutrition Trust. Some of you might be familiar with our charity. We have a website with a number of eating well resources, and those that are appropriate for nurseries and settings include a guide on eating well packed lunches for 1 to under 5-year-olds, food choices and portion size guides for 1 to under 5-year-olds, and snacks for 1 to under 5-year-olds. And these all provide, as you can see, unbranded and local and familiar foods, portion sizes, using items that are usually in people's kind of kitchens and locally available, with recipe guides and a lot of practical tips and resources on how to meet the nutritional needs and guidelines of children of this age. And then next slide, please. Lastly, I just want to end off with acknowledging that when there are corporate partnerships, that there is a potential for conflicts of interest, and that there are examples of corporate influence in nutrition and health related policy setting, and that some food companies might use corporate partnerships as marketing strategies to promote brands, including introducing products and brands to children when they're developing their habits and taste preferences, and that there is quite a bit of work being done to reduce marketing of unhealthy foods and beverages to children. So just to ensure that policies and advocacy to improve the nutritional quality of food provision should be free from commercial influence, including in early years settings, and that comprehensive policies like those that Magic Breakfast has regarding corporate partnerships should be maintained, with appropriate safeguards in place to ensure that there isn't undue commercial influence in this process. So next slide, please. Thank you for your attention and listening, and we've got some resources on our website, as I mentioned. We've also got various social media platforms where we regularly share some information, infographics, events, webinars, where we're sharing more about early years nutrition and advocacy and policy support in this space. So thanks very much. That's it from me.
Thank you so much, Katie. That was really, really insightful and really interesting, I am sure, for all of our attendees as well. So please add any questions into the Q&A channel as you think of them. We're now going to hear a bit more about the reality of school breakfast provision on the ground in our partner schools who offer breakfast to nursery-aged children. A panel discussion bringing together staff from 3 of our partner schools, wonderfully facilitated, I know, by our very own engagement partner, Lisa Phillips. The panel will include Anna Jameson, who is Assistant Head Teacher and Early Years Foundation Stage Lead at Moorside Community Primary Academy School, Julie Cole, who is Parent Support Assistant at Mill Lane Primary School, and Carol Wathen, who is joining us and has needs to be credited in particular in terms of having stepped in at the very last minute to cover for a colleague who needed to take on some teaching responsibilities. So a very warm welcome and thank you to you all, because we know you're stepping away potentially from breakfast provision to join us today and shine a light on what's happening in schools across the country. So thank you, and over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lindsay. As Lindsay said, I'm Lisa. I'm an engagement partner working in Lancashire. It's my pleasure to introduce you to some of our amazing partner schools from the north of England. Firstly, if we go to Anna from one of our fantastic Lancashire schools, which I've been lucky enough to visit on a number of occasions. Anna, please could you introduce yourself and tell me, why did you start feeding nursery children breakfast?
So I'm Anna Jameson. I'm the assistant head teacher at Moorside, but I'm the early years lead. We first introduced breakfast provision because a lot of our children were coming in hungry in the morning. It was having like a negative impact on the cognitive development and their overall concentration in lessons. So we decided to take on and be a part of Magic Breakfast for all the school and all the academy, which ranges from 2-year-olds to 11-year-olds. And we did this because we wanted every child to start the day with a healthy, nutritional breakfast. And a lot of our children come from a background of poverty. Some of our parents aren't able to work. And for our working parents, a lot of them are rushing to get to work in the morning, so don't always have the time. So we thought it would be a fantastic way to ensure that every child has a healthy start to the day, along with the infants having a free school dinner as well. We're able now to know that each child in our academy has at least 2 healthy meals per day before they go home.
Great, thank you. And if I can bring Julie in.
We decided from the start to make it a whole school policy rather than just for the primary school. We've got 73% of our pupils of our school are on pupil premium, so it's a high level of deprivation. School provide different resources for children starting school, including jumpers and book bags. And we just felt that part of taking care of the well-being, the whole well-being of the children, is to help them with the breakfast, to provide a breakfast that you say is nutritional and not full of sugar, and to try and start our healthy program from the beginning for the children. So we've just started with our 2-year provision, so they share breakfast with the nursery. So we have lots of children who are getting a nutritional breakfast, and we have 38 different languages. So culturally, it was introducing the children to the types of food that would be easily available and locally available to them as well.
Brilliant, thank you, Julie. And Carol, if you could introduce yourself and tell us why you started feeding nursery children breakfast.
Hi, good morning. I'm Carol Wathen. I'm from Victoria Primary Academy in Leeds. We're part of Wellspring Academy Trust. We decided to open up our nursery provision with breakfast cereals just to support the whole family and as well as the children. What we were finding were people were reluctant to bring the older children, because if they then had nursery children as well to come to school, they would have to make 2 journeys. So to make that easy for them and looking out for the community, we decided that we'd open up that provision so that they could come, and both children, the younger children and the older children, were getting the benefits of a good nutritional breakfast. We also are in an area of high deprivation, and the parents appreciate, as much support as we can give them. It's really just to make sure that all the children in school get a free breakfast. There's no stigma attached, because obviously everybody's entitled to come and join the breakfast club, and that ensures that all children get a healthy nutritional breakfast to start off the day, followed up by another meal, which again takes the pressure off parents having to provide two additional meals for those children, and it's less stressful for the parents on a morning to get the children into school.
Brilliant, thank you, Carol. Less stress for parents in the morning is always really helpful.
Yes.
Next, if I could ask Anna, how does the breakfast provision work in your school, and how does it differ for nursery-aged children compared to primary-aged children?
So we've currently employed somebody from the kitchen staff, and they make the hot food, the bagels, the porridge, the toast, and the beans each morning. So that's all ready for when the children enter the setting. All our children from 2 to 11, we thought it'd be a really good way of promoting independence. So they all serve themselves their own breakfast. They're given a healthy choice of what they'd like to choose. So they all serve and provide their own breakfast, supported by the members of staff. The teaching staff go in the morning and they set up the bowls and the spoons and everything, so that's readily available when the children first come in. The only difference in our setting, For our primary school age children from reception onwards, they do morning work in the morning. So they have breakfast alongside doing the morning work. But in early years, we make it more of a family style breakfast. So they sit at the tables in small groups, and the adults join them at the tables, and they're able to speak to their peers and their adults while eating the breakfast.
Brilliant, thank you. And how about at Mill Lane?
Sorry, I forgot to mention this school. I work in Mill Lane and we're in Stockton in the northeast. Yeah, it works very similar in that the primary school children, what we have is year 6 helpers, so they're the breakfast club, and they take the trays from the kitchen, like from the counter at the kitchen, and they carry them trays with the cereal and fresh milk and the hot toast to the classrooms. And then when the children come in, they can access their own food, they help themselves. But in the EYFS, we have reception class actually go into the dinner hall. So we started them in the dinner hall so that the 4 to 5-year-olds get used to the actual sitting in the dinner hall and it being quiet, and there's just them there on the morning, so that it wasn't overwhelming for them when they started full time and doing lunch. So that became their practice. But in nursery we have 3 or 4 tables, and 2 tables will be set up with bowls and the rest will be set up with the toast or bagels in the centre, so the children can choose which table they sit at, and they're supported by staff, and obviously the 2-year-olds access that provision as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And finally, can you take us through your breakfast provision, Carol, and the difference between nursery and primary?
Yeah, so it's very similar to what the other 2 ladies have just said. Ours differs because it is in the nursery setting. What we've found is that the children are able to socialise better within that smaller, quieter space. What it does do is encourages the fussy eaters that maybe wouldn't try things at home, are more willing to try things in that nursery setting because they're with their peers. So they kind of encourage each other to, have a go, try these, have a try these. So we feel that that's a move forward. And then again, that prepares them then for when they do move into reception, because it's a routine that they're used to doing. So it does help them socialise. They're not eating in isolation, which they may do if the parents are working parents and they're busy and trying to rush to get ready. They may just put a bowl of cereal down for them and sort of get those eaten. Where when they're in the setting, they're all chatting together, they're all helping each other, and they're getting prepared for for those routines. They're talking whilst they're eating, so again, it's improving their language skills and developing social skills because they kind of copy each other, which is nice to see. And the more confident ones help to bring the quieter children on. We do adults sit with them, similar to what Julie's just said. So adults are also having those conversations. And in terms of like safeguarding our children, you often in those kind of situations, the children speak out and say things, which again is useful for us to be able to then, to listen to those children and support the families around any disclosures that are made at that point. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's really, really useful for a multitude of things.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. It's like family style is the way to go. Next, if you could tell us, Anna, how your breakfast provision impacts the children and the families that you support.
So it's had a huge impact overall on our attendance and punctuality. We saw a huge rise in punctuality for our pupil premium children. For our working parents, we've had amazing feedback, just saying that it's one less pressure in the morning. Like Carol mentioned, they're able to be provided with breakfast and parents aren't in a rush and children aren't eating home alone. We've also seen a really good impact on the vocabulary, as Carol mentioned also. The children in the early years have that time just allocated where they can just speak and speak with adults. We've seen from a poverty point of view, a lot of the parents are really grateful and have thought it's had a huge impact on their family life, as they don't have the pressures to provide breakfast every morning, especially in households with a number of children. And we've also seen a really big impact on cognitive development within lessons. Children are able to concentrate more in the mornings without feeling hungry. And before break times, we found a dip in concentration because some of the children hadn't had breakfast and they were waiting for a snack at break time. But they're able to concentrate a lot better for that morning period now. So that's been really helpful. And I also think in the early years, it helps the children regulate before they start the session. They're able just to sit and digest the morning and speak to the peers and the adults before the pressures of the day. And it's had a really big impact and become part of our routine at Moorside. At first, we were a little bit worried how kind of would fit it into the sessions, but it's been seamless. After a few initial teething problems, it's just part of our day at Moorside now. So I think the impact has been huge.
Amazing, thank you. And can I bring you back in, Julie, to talk about how breakfast impacts the children and families?
Yeah, we like I say, we have in nursery and minis, we have 19 different languages, so the children get around the table. What we noticed is that a lot of our families don't eat at tables, and the children were trying to eat using their hands. Now they're quite welcome to do that with the toast, but we also in introducing cereal, the children have learned how to use spoons, which is a new concept for a lot of them. So they end up being able to eat better, especially as they move through the school. We used to have great difficulties in reception trying to get the children at lunchtime, whereas now it's become a norm for them to actually eat in that fashion. And again, the same things, they're able to concentrate, it's calmer. It's part of the school thing where they come in and it's that sitting down that makes a calm period at the start of the day, so that we can maintain that and just build it as part of the routine for all the pupils. The parents obviously are thankful and puts less pressure on those, especially the ones who are in poverty. So there's a lot of benefits there, in that the parents don't stress as much, and that obviously will have a positive impact hopefully on the children. Yeah, it's just, like I say, part of our day, and it's priceless. It's priceless to see those children learning from each other and sharing.
Amazing, thank you, Julie. And last but by no means least, if we can come to Carol to talk us through the impact that you've seen.
Yeah, again, I think it's similar to what both ladies have just said, Anna and Julie. We've seen a massive improvement in attendance, punctuality. The kids are eager to come in because they know they're going to come in and they're going to get fed, they're going to get something to eat, which is, I'm a bit like that myself. So I think it is a big seller to get children in school on time. Once they're in there, they're sat there socialising, having those conversations, that language development that we've already spoken about, and they're just keen, to come into school. Less pressure on parents, and increase in learning. When it's learning time, they're ready and settled because their tummies are full, so they're ready and settled and ready to start with the session. So without repeating what everybody else has said, it's that kind of thing.
Brilliant, thank you. Anna, if we could come back to you, what challenges do you face with breakfast in nursery, and is there anything that you'd like to have more insight on?
We've not faced too many challenges, just at first the logistics of who's going to make the hot food. But we employed a member of our kitchen staff because the value of actually the breakfast itself outweighs the having to employ someone, and it was the right decision. Other than that, no major challenges, apart from just a funny challenge, which is the beans. And some of the children spilling it down themselves in the morning. But we've found the beans on toast works better throughout the older ages in the school. And a lot of the early years children preferred the porridge and the cereal and the toast. So no major challenges, just minor teething problems at first. But like the benefits outweigh any of those.
Brilliant. Yeah, I can get on board with the beans down the top, but you know, nutrition outweighs convenience in our house. Thank you. Julie, if you could talk about any challenges that you faced with breakfast in nursery, and also is there anything else that you'd like insight on?
I don't think there were any particular challenges. Like Hannah said, it was just the logistics of setting it up and making sure that, you know, it was that we were punctual on it, that we had a plan and that we stuck with it, and that obviously having the older children helping carry the food from the kitchen, it has been helpful because they've got gives them a sense of responsibility in being helpful with the younger children. Yeah, no challenges really. The challenges for us is the different cultures and the different foods and trying to encourage children to eat. But that's a norm in our school, so we don't see it as a challenge. We just see it as like this is the step here that we're going to continue with this, and it's just worked lovely. That, like I say, the children mirroring each other has been the biggest thing, and it develops their language, it develops their friendships, and it develops like a sense of belonging in the school for the nursery children.
Brilliant, thank you. And Carol, any challenges that you face with the nursery breakfast?
No particular challenges other than the initial setup. Once everything was set up, the staff volunteered to come in earlier so that these children could be included within the setting. We create challenges ourselves sometimes because we try and do a little bit of a themed breakfast. So like yesterday we did the pancakes for them, which they absolutely loved because it was obviously it was pancake day, and just to keep it fun and exciting and light-hearted. Other than that, I would say there's no major challenges because it's something that we've been doing for quite a while with reception onwards. So just to add, you know, extra little ones, it's not really been a significant challenge. Just benefits is all I can see. You know, the benefits outweigh any challenge that would be there. You know, to see happy, healthy, and well-fed children is what we're about, and ready to learn. So it's just a win all round.
Brilliant, thank you. And one last question. If you were asked to give a top tip for running a smooth breakfast provision in nursery, what would it be? Anna, if you want to go first.
I just think to keep to like a seamless routine, really, have all the staff buy in, make it a whole school culture and daily routine and stick to it like Carol mentioned. And then I think that's the best way, really.
Brilliant. Julie, have you got any top tips?
Again, to repeat myself, that start of the day makes it calmer because the children can actually come in and sit down, and then without, like I say, without being hungry, without having concerns or worries about being hungry. So it's just that calm atmosphere that they have, and that wind down after getting to school, because sometimes that can be stressful for children and parents especially. So it's that early period where it becomes a routine that we calm the children ready for learning.
Brilliant, thank you. What about you, Carol? Have you got any top tips to share?
Just similar. I think we're all pretty much doing the same thing because it works. So it's just routines, friendly, familiar faces, not too much pressure on the children because they're only young children, you know. So yes, high expectations, but you know, we do let them kind of get up and wander around and try things, and that's it basically. It's just keeping those systems and structures in place, which is what we do throughout the school, you know, and everybody has a good start to the day then.
Amazing, thank you. Well, thank you all so much for your contribution today. Thank you for the work that you do in school every single morning. Thank you, Carol, for stepping in at last minute, and I'll hand back to Lindsey.
Thanks, Lisa. And you took the words right out of my mouth. A very big thank you to all of our partner schools, whether you're here on the call or whether they are out providing free breakfasts as we speak. Thank you so much for all of the questions that have been coming in. I inevitably encourage lots of questions and put myself under pressure to try and get all of the brilliant questions in. So let's see what we can do in the next 14 minutes or so. So I'm going to invite all of our speakers back onto the screen. And I suppose maybe just to reflect and context for those of you who either know Magic Breakfast really well or are just getting to know us, I think one of the powerful things, and I think it came through really well in the speakers this morning, that Magic Breakfast does is that we tackle child morning hunger today. So we deliver on a daily basis and we see what works in the real world. And it's wonderful hearing people like Carol talk about how, you know, there are only benefits, no challenges. And I'm so grateful because I know that there is an awful lot of work to make it feel as though there might not be challenges, and a real mindset and embracing of the kind of stigma barrier-free approach that Magic Breakfast you know, expects and sets out, but also the fact that we're looking to end child morning hunger today. And so being able to bring in, Katie, your experiences and those of the wider sector and partners, those of our, you know, donors and supporters, many of whom, as I say, are probably on this morning's Magic Morning, to enable and inform Jacquie and her team. So as a starting point, Jacquie, if you could just give maybe a bit of an overview of how is Magic Breakfast planning to build the evidence base over, you know, kind of the coming period. What's our timeline, and what is the impact that we're looking to understand and explore?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a impact and insights team, and we research is a key part of what we do there. In terms of looking at early years research, we're still at scoping stage at this point. We're very much keen to see what's currently in the field, as well as we know there's not much published, but is there stuff that might be coming through? So over the next 18 months to 2 years is our time frame for this, but that's obviously dependent on resource and capacity as well. And we're also, as part of that, one thing is kind of academic research, and another is learning from our partner schools and constantly learning, evaluating, understanding best practice from partner schools and feeding that back into our research program. So that's kind of the timeline of it on it. In terms of impact, we're looking at the things that have been mentioned by various speakers. So that might be things like we'd expect to see independence, where feasible, children getting their own food or being helped by others, and that kind of some of the speakers have talked about using a spoon for the first time. We also know that it gives a variety of tastes, and it introduces children to new tastes, different things, different textures for their palates, etc. There was one of our engagement partners told us a story of a school where a lot of the children at home didn't have tables. Where they were living was too small for any tables. Children were eating from the floor, sat on the floor. And so they were used to having toast mainly in the morning, not so used to having cereal, because obviously milk is much more messy. So the opportunity to have different things at school and try different things, have things with milk. The only child there who was having cereal was one who was having dry cereal. So it's those kind of things that give give opportunity, and those good eating habits early on. Katie referenced how important that is. Behavior regulation, Judy referenced that, but that's really important for children in terms of the ability and the openness to learn. So you both want them to have the energy to learn, but also, be ready, be calm, be open to what that learning might bring. And those are the elements that I think that will speak to that inequality gap and that kind of disadvantage gap that we're seeing. But we want to learn everything that we can that we already know for other age groups, but we're just in a much earlier stage and early years of knowing about that.
Thank you, Jacquie. Another question that's come in, and again, Katie, if it's all right, I'll come to you on this one. And I think this is often what we've spoken about, certainly since COVID and the pandemic, is this sense that things are, sadly getting worse. So Katie, has young children's health worsened over the past few years? And do we have any insight as to why that is? And just noting for our school staff as well, I'd love to just draw out, after Katie's spoken, any insight or reflections you have from your own communities as well. But Katie, in the first instance.
Thanks very much, Lindsey. And that's a really good question. And I want to start maybe with the why, and highlighting a few words that I heard a lot of people say. Things like, rush and stress in the mornings and time. And this has become an issue because many families have both working parents now. We know we've been in a cost of living crisis for quite a while. Incomes are affected, and this influences everything related to children's development, including food intake. And this morning, kind of frenzy that can happen, it's quite easy for children's needs to get lost unintentionally along the way, especially young children, small tummies, they get full quickly, they need to eat regularly. We know the impact of food on mood, the concept of being hangry, and this can happen in young children, but they're not able to communicate it as well as older children or adults. And the answer to this is often, convenience foods, things that are quick and easy to eat, and the cheaper option might not be the most nutritious option. And, things like not wanting to waste food, so making sure that we give children something we know that they'll eat, that's got, a long shelf life, we keep the snacks readily available. And all of this impacts on, outcomes that are not as favorable. And I would encourage us to think a little bit about, the traditional recipes. So a few people mentioned porridge and encouraging children to eat porridge and be familiar with, eggs for breakfast, fruit and yogurt where it's appropriate, where it's accessible, where it's available. So there's many reasons why nutritional intakes and health outcomes have changed. And what we see in the evidence and research and what's been mentioned is increasing rates of obesity, particularly. And this is a problem because it has impacts for later in life and it's difficult to reverse. So it's important to try and prevent obesity in the first place. We know there's impacts on dental decay, but also mental health. So, and children's mental health as well. So I don't want to paint a negative picture. There's a lot being done to try to, prevent this and improve the situation. But the current research does show that at least, children's health is stalling, but we have an opportunity to make changes and to improve this for the next generation through all of the valuable lessons that people have been sharing and remembering the importance of intervention in the early years and early in the day, breakfast as an opportunity to ensure that children are getting a good start. So I hope that answers the question.
That's great. Thank you. And you're right. It's about highlighting the opportunity. So yes, any of the schools panel want to add any kind of, I guess, local experiences, context, and maybe also recognizing not just health. I know there was a comment around kind of speech development, and we've heard from quite a lot of our partner schools, oracy and language delays that have been, I suppose, exacerbated since lockdown and COVID. But Julie, Anna, Carol, any additional thoughts that you wanted to reflect from your communities on health?
I just agree with what's already been said about the nutritional value and being able to be given a choice for our children. Quite a lot of our children, when we've looked at devising our own menu at lunchtime, are constantly picking like chicken nuggets and waffles and all the things that are quick to make. So this just provides an opportunity of choice and to try new foods and nutritious ones. So I agree with what's been said so far.
Thanks, Anna.
Yeah, and similar. I mean, I agree with Anna. We do see children that are coming into school upset, distressed, displaying poor behaviours. And the root of that, when we actually sit down and chat with them within our pastoral team, is because they've not had food. They've not had anything since the night before. They come in, we offer them cereal, we offer them bagels. And that 10 minutes, just having those, having something in the stomach, makes a difference to the whole day, how they settle in school, and then obviously the outcomes. We do see, as Dr. Katie mentioned, a lot of tooth decay within our community, and some obesity, which is concerning. But the option again of a nutritional start to the day, a nutritional breakfast, does have an impact on those children's life chances, ultimately.
Thanks, Carol. Julie, we can't see you at the moment, but if there's anything you wanted to add in.
I think every school can see the difference in COVID kids, as we like to call it. So I'll speak, like you said, the speech and the language development, and just the social communication of children has been affected dramatically. So trying to build that back up and start at 3-year-old, there's been 3 years of that missing. So, you know, it's really tricky for schools to try and get, the children are 3 years behind, basically. So it's trying to get them into that routine and to encourage them to be learners. And that's where the food helps in their being able to concentrate and just take things in, be little sponges. EYFS.
Thank you, Julie. Lisa, I was just going to come to you. One of the, well, actually, several of the questions are really wanting to understand, what can Magic Breakfast learn? What do we see specifically in the early years space? And conscious you support such a wide range of our partner schools and engagement partner. What are the things that you find really works, or maybe what are the different approaches or considerations that you think about for the early years nursery settings with your partner schools?
I think one of the best things about seeing the breakfast is I don't think any two of my schools approach it in exactly the same way. They all tailor it to what works in their setting. So I think the like what I've seen particularly at Moorside is that the nursery children are involved in the school, and it's such a nice, nurturing, warm start to the day to have a family style breakfast. But also it, like Anna and the others have said, it's like an introduction to school to make that, first step into reception so much smoother and not as jarring for the children. So yeah, I think the family breakfast and the nurturing opportunities and picking up the safeguarding issues is just a really lovely way for nursery children to start the day.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you to everyone who has submitted questions. And as I predicted, unfortunately, we're not going to get to all of them, but I did want to just respond to a couple, which are always such lovely questions to have asked, which is how can we all help? And, we have lots of partners who are already on the call who are helping, whether that's providing us with access to free, nutritious breakfast foods, or supporting our work, enabling us to deliver more breakfasts on a daily basis, or support and invest in our impact and insight team and our learning and evaluation. ultimately, what we would love to hear from partners, whether that's in the sector or funders alike, is what you can offer, what you would like to know, and building up our shared understanding so that we can collectively build that evidence base and seek to influence government policy and ultimately ensure that no child is too hungry to learn, even if they are under the age of 5 or older than 11. So lots for us to keep doing. Thank you again to all of our panelists and speakers today. I know a lot of preparation goes into these Magic Mornings. Thank you very much to all of the attendees. And as always, a very big thank you to the Magic Breakfast team who have made this morning happen. So if you'd like to watch back, you'll be able to access that on our YouTube. And in true Magic Breakfast style, we always want to know what we can improve. So please complete the survey that will pop up for you as well. Have a wonderful day. Thank you very much and take care.